Hey, it's Lemon. Welcome to the Backlogs. Hope you're doing well. We started the year strong with Gears of War, and judging by the comments, I need to play the rest of the series as well, so look forward to that. But now it's time for another new game, Salt and Sacrifice. But Lemon, you've already played Salt and Sacrifice. You even beat it with carrots. And yeah, you're right, we did do that. But you know what we didn't do? Play through the DLC that got added after the video came out. And if the Game Awards are to be believed, a DLC is basically a whole new game, and the Game Awards are never wrong. So with that in mind, I think it's time to find out. Can you beat Salt and Sacrifice with only crossbows? Now then, let's talk about crossbows. First off, there's two classes that start with them, the Cleric and the Duelist. The Cleric starts with a tier 0 wooden crossbow, while the Duelist starts with the tier 1 sturdy crossbow. Considering the sturdy crossbow does slightly more damage, and the Duelist starts with a node in Marksman, the skill we need to use better and better crossbows, it's an easy choice. Fun fact about the crossbows, more often than not, they scale with the luck stat, which just so happens to be my favorite stat in any game, because it means less grinding. Give me less grinding and more damage, and I'm a happy guy. Combine this with some of the quality of life improvements this game has made since release, and we'll be able to smite God himself with ease.
Speaking of smiting gods, let me tell you about today's sponsor, Smite 2.
What? No, we're smiting one god, not two. Do you get it?
Anyway, Smite 2 is the sequel to the popular MOBA game of the same name, where players clash against each other as their favorite gods in 5v5 combat. There's 45 gods to choose from, including a few fan favorites from the original game like Zeus and Loki, and a new god will be added each week for the next few months. That's quite the pantheon. And it's not just 5v5 combat either. Outside of adding a couple of classic game modes like Joust and Assault, Smite 2 also has Aspects, a new gameplay modifier that changes the way some of the gods' abilities work. That'll teach you to memorize my combos. So if you're interested in giving the game a try, you can click my link in the description and pinned comment below. The game is currently in open beta, cross-platform on PC and consoles, and is free to play. So there's no better time to get into the action. Alright, Lemon, I'm done. You can come back out now. Lemon? Uh-oh.
So before we were so rudely interrupted, I mentioned that there were several quality of life improvements made to the game since we last played it. So let's talk about that. First off, several of the obelisks now act as a fast travel. You can't fast travel to all of them, but each world has about 5 that you can, which really cuts down on all of the climbing and sprinting around you have to do. Speaking of sprinting, it's free now, no stamina required. The only time this isn't true is when you enter combat. Again, this just helps remove some of the unnecessary downtime during travel, which is always appreciated. And while there were a few other changes to the game, like how often you get juggled by bosses and stuff like that, one of the biggest changes that's going to affect this run in particular is how ammunition and health pots work. Just like before, we can harvest minerals that could be turned into ammunition. When you rest at an obelisk, any ammo you're missing from your maximum amount is automatically converted from the minerals on your person and your item box back at camp. However, you can also hold about 30 minerals in your pockets before they start getting sent to your item box. So, if you were to, say, fight a boss that has a lot of health with only a crossbow, you could shoot all 16 of your bolts at said boss, which isn't enough to kill him, then roll your way to the edge of the arena and craft some more with the minerals you have in your pockets. The crafting process is slow, but with enough spacing, it gets the job done. Now, those of you who've played Salt 2 in the past are probably rolling your eyes right now, since these mechanics have been in the game since launch. But did you know that you can't run out of ammo now? Your average player will probably never see it, but in the current patch of Salt and Sacrifice, if at any point you run completely out of minerals, resting at an obelisk will automatically refill your ammo pouch to its maximum. Which means if you're completely stuck in an area that is easier to get through with ranged attacks, or are just an idiot like me who thinks ranged weapons only is a good idea, the game will always make sure you leave an obelisk with one full pouch of ammo. This is also true of health pots, which used to require you to harvest berry bushes to make. But unlike ammo, you can't craft health pots on the fly. So harvesting berry bushes is less about grinding out health pots now, and more about getting other items like bloodberries and tender vines, both of which are important for survival and crafting. Unfortunately for us, we're still going to need to grind out minerals because we're relying solely on our crossbow to carry us through the game. But if you're just playing normally, these changes are a big deal, and should really help remove some of the tedium that a lot of players complained about at launch. And if Bloodborne ever gets remastered and this quality of life improvement is not in the game, I swear on the old gods and the new that I will. Anyway, with the first boss neatly out of the way and the basic mechanics of the run explained, let's talk about boss number 2, the Pyromancer. He's not overly difficult, but due to the way our build works, we're gonna have to play this a little differently. You might have noticed that I'm not really doing anything, and there's a reason for that. It's because I'm poor. Why waste all of my ammo attacking the mage and his minions when I could just let the world enemies around me do it for free? It's not like they need the salt or item drops anyway, so if you think about it, I'm actually being really responsible and eco-friendly. Now, there are a few parts of the mage's journey where I have to participate in the fight, but if we play smart, these parts are few and far between. And to get the absolute most bang for our buck, we're going to take full advantage of another mechanic that's never explained in the game, which I'm going to call minion morale minimizing, or for short. Essentially, the boss and the minion's health bars are interlinked. Think of it like the Skeleton Lord's boss fight in Dark Souls 2. Every time I hit an enemy, I chip a little bit of health off of the boss's HP. If the boss's health hits a certain point, he runs to the next area, where he'll spawn in more minions. And when pushed to about 50% health, he'll teleport to the actual boss arena, where you can finish him off. In a way, this mechanic actually lets players decide how they want to play the game. You could ignore minions and go straight for the boss, focus on just minions and maximize your item drops, or speedrun the boss's chase sequence and attack both, essentially attacking the boss's health bar twice. Personally, I've always been a big advocate of attacking only the minions, as this is the best way to maximize crafting material drops, and basically guarantees that you'll be able to craft at least 2 items after beating the boss one time. And if you're a madman and want to grind out all the items a boss has to offer, killing only minions and then quitting to the main menu right after you enter the boss arena is a solid way to get a majority of the parts you need. It's a lot faster than hoping for random encounter mages anyway. You know, with as many obscure mechanics as this game has, and as divided as the community is about it, maybe I should do a we need to talk about this game. Don't know why I didn't think about that until now. Oh hey, the crossbow can kill 2 enemies with a single bolt. I learned something new today. But with that idea safely scribbled on a post-it note somewhere, it's time for the first mage of the game. As you've seen from the footage, we never shot at the pyromancer during his chase phase, but he still starts the fight at 50% health. Proof of at work. And while I was mentally prepared to have to craft some bolts in the middle of the fight, it only takes 12 to get the job done. Easy game for babies. 1 mage down, so many more to go. The pyromancer's crafting supplies don't really unlock anything useful for my build, but I can craft the molten ring for a little extra health, and the pyromancer's Chris dagger in case I ever find a crossbow that deals fire damage. So there's that. And after upgrading my crossbow to level 2 for a little bit more damage, and pumping 4 points into the crossbow spoke of the skill tree, we're off to our next target, the cryomancer. For the sake of pacing, it's safe for you to assume that every single fight starts the same way. I mow down the mage's minions are never difficult to kill, and I definitely never miss a single shot, and after collecting all the minion drops and restocking on ammunition, I finish the chase sequence of the boss and begin the actual fight. The boss fights themselves are all a bit different, so we'll linger on those, but I just wanted to make sure I didn't repeat myself more than absolutely necessary. The cryomancer is normally an annoying fight for melee weapons, since the ice rain attack he does tends to force you to play keep away. But because our crossbow does more than enough damage, this is an easy fight. Above the boss arena, I find an exotic strand, which will increase our ammunition to 17 once we craft it together with some fine leather. Then I use the resource I got from the cryomancer to make the cryomancer's pick for extra cold damage, and the frosten ring, which increases our maximum stamina. I used my salt to unlock Marksman 3, which lets me use tier 3 crossbows and gives me 2 points in luck at the same time, then get to work on the next boss, the Venomancer. A hazed enemy actually followed me into the arena before the fight, so I took full advantage of the free damage he was offering. But the Venomancer didn't take too kindly to his interference, so it didn't last long. And then, disaster. See that shot? The one that's currently lodged in the stone wall instead of the mage's skull? No big deal, right? Look at that damage. Surely we've got enough ammo to... Oh. Okay, well, I've got a pocket full of mineral shards. All we need to do is... yeah, okay. That might be a problem. So, turns out, if you take any damage while trying to craft, it cancels the crafting animation. And the Venomancer, who leans more towards ranged attacks than melee, doesn't seem to have any attacks that are far enough apart for me to get a craft in. Which means we only have one choice. We have to back out of the fight before poison takes us, and try again. Luckily, while grinding minerals, I was able to dig up 2 Ashpire upgrade materials, which means we can level up our crossbow to level 3. Combine that with 4 more points into luck, and some better aim, and that should be just enough to get us across the finish line. And what the heck, throw in some new digs as well. A little extra poison resistance never hurt anyone. And you know what, let's bring a stronger enemy into the arena with me too. Because why not? And when I say stronger enemy, I mean stronger. These green knights have always been a pain to fight, so logic would denote that they can do some big damage to a boss. And our green friend does not disappoint. Iron Tarkus, is that you? But with Tarkus' mission complete, I have plenty of ammunition to finish the job. Venomancer down. Time to get a reward that I actually want for once. Because wouldn't you know it, the blacksmith can actually make me a crossbow with the Venomancer's remains, the Venom Bite Crossbow, which has a whopping S scaling with luck. Combine that with the Venomancer's Needle, which increases poison damage, and we've got a force to be reckoned with. Or at least, that's what I thought. More on that in a second. I also upgraded my marksman skill to level 5, which means that I can wield any and all crossbows I find from here on out. You'll love to see it. Pop quiz! Tell me what's wrong with the Venom Bite Crossbow. Did you catch it? Here, try again. Did you get it that time? That's right, it doesn't do any damage. What it does do is apply the poison status effect, which means that if I shoot an enemy enough times, they'll become poisoned, losing 1 HP every tick. I'd tell you the exact amount of health being lost here, but applying more poison status to an enemy actually speeds up the ticks, so without peeking into the code, I can't give you exact numbers. What I can do though, is give you a side-by-side comparison, and who better to test this on than the next boss, the Hydromancer. With 17 bolts, I can knock the Hydromancer down to about 15% health. Not too shabby, but it does require me to find time to craft some more ammunition. However, with the Venom Bite, I can trigger the poison status with 4 bolts. And with only those 4 bolts, we watch as his health drops to 75%, then 50%, and then finally comes to a stop at about 25% of his health remaining. Not bad for only 4 bolts. Well, no reason to play coy. I'll let the sturdy crossbow take it from here. And just like that, a tanky boss destroyed with less than a full clip of ammunition. Did you hear that? That's the sound of the game breaking over my knee. And something tells me it's only gonna get worse from here. I craft the Deep Amulet, the Bulwark Ring, and the Drowning Dagger, which give me increased poise, increased defense, and constant stamina recovery respectively, then slam into our next target, the Green Huntsman. This boss is normally a nightmare for ranged weapon runs, since he's very aggressive and gives you very little time to recover, especially in his later phases. But after 6 bolts to the face, the poison triggers, and after a full minute of dodging his attacks, the poison finally wears off, doing about 40% of his health bar. Considering it takes 6 bolts to trigger the poison, and we only have 11 remaining, we probably can't win this fight without doing some crafting mid-battle. Unless he decides to trigger the poison effect with only 5 bolts this time, for some reason. I mean, I'm not complaining, I'm just confused. But then he goes back to requiring 6 bolts to trigger the effect. I guess there was some carryover of the status last time? I'm not entirely sure. I guess the main takeaway here is that poison is a bit fickle, but also overpowered. So long as you know how to dodge your target for extended periods of time, a single magazine may be all that you need. And would you look what the Huntsman dropped me? Why yes, I would like free ammo for my crossbow, thank you for asking. And just in time too, because the Electromancer might be a bit tough for our build. This boss doesn't have a lot of health, but he does hit like a bass drop in a Skrillex song. So while our poison damage can definitely get the job done, judging by how much damage he's already taken, our dodging game has to be top notch. Thankfully, I've played Salt a time or two, and dodging this guy's attacks is as easy as But after avoiding further attacks, we discover one of the weird quirks about Salt and Sacrifice that I don't fully understand. See that? That's what we in the challenge run business call some bullshit. In reality, what's happening here is that Salt and Sacrifice doesn't let mage bosses go down from status effects. I think it has something to do with the whole heart stealing animation, or maybe there's just an overall wonkiness to status effects in this game. Either way, we need to pull out our sturdy crossbow and fire a bolt to finish the job. Best get used to that now. And with my luck reaching level 28, that's World 1 fully complete, which means it's time for World 2, Bulgaran. I swing and sprint my way through the desert heat, collecting a few upgrade materials for my build as I go, and eventually bump into the hate-cursed matriarch. 3 bolts later, she's already poisoned, and the game of keep away can begin. Halfway through the fight, I decide that we can safely speed things up a bit, and use my physical crossbow to plank her health down some more, and this, in combination with another round of poison, is enough to get the job done. Another exotic strand added to my inventory, and a bag of marbles for my troubles. And with that tool acquired, we can now access almost every mage in World 2. Starting with the Wild Pandemonium, the Arrowmancer. Unlike his brethren, the Arrowmancer can be poisoned with a single bolt. However, judging by the damage, it's either not doing very much, or this mage has much more health than we're used to. Which begs the question, does triggering poison more than one stack the damage? Why yes. Yes it does. And judging by that noise, I've accidentally found another way to break the game. How unfortunate. So, with new game-breaking information in hand and a quick switch to my physical crossbow, that's the Arrowmancer destroyed with minimal issue. I craft the Whirlwind Ring and Draped Amulet, since both of them speed up stamina regeneration, find a new artifact that also increases my stamina regen by 4.9%, then make a quick detour in Bulgaran to meet up with a new NPC. Girl, you have no idea. This mysterious woman offers me a bottle of Alterstone vintage wine. You know, as one does in the middle of the desert. At night. to a stranger. Oh god, I need an adult. Let's just go fight the Terramancer. This mage is much more resilient to poison damage, but I was able to double confirm that triggering poison more than once increases the damage. As you can see, the poison is doing 2 damage per tick now, instead of just 1. I fire all but the last of my bolts into the fleshy bits of his rocky torso, keeping the poison pain train going, then decide to take advantage of how slow this particular mage is anyway, and craft some more bolts mid-fight. Just in case. Probably unnecessary, but when hunting magical beings, it pays to be cautious. And look what our caution got us. A new artifact, with a little extra range damage and a little over 10% chance to keep every bolt I fire. Combine that with upgrading my Venom Bite crossbow to level 3 for even faster poison application, and the build is really starting to come together. And it's not as if the next few bosses revolve around death and disease or anything, so we should be perfectly fine. Right? Guys? So, the next few bosses revolve around death and disease, and they're not exactly keen on getting poisoned. It's also becoming increasingly apparent that my bad habit of ignoring any sort of armor improvements is starting to catch up to me, judging by the massive damage I'm taking from a single hit. Luckily for us though, the Tireless Exalted is one of the slower bosses, and so long as you stay out of range, you'll have time to restock your ammo mid-fight, which means we can now do 4 damage per tick, then with a little more pressure, knock it up to 5. Death by 1,000 cuts. I level up my ammo and health quantities, bringing them to 18 and 8 respectively, bring my luck all the way up to 36, then realize that I can buy ammunition materials from a local vendor in town. They're not cheap, but it's not like I'm using my silver on anything else, so it's better to invest in ammo than it is to let it all just go to waste every time I die. Speaking of death, it's time for the Necromancer. Hey Tony, nice crown you got there. Surprisingly, he can be poisoned, and with only 3 bolts to boot. Weird, but I'm not complaining. And after getting him all the way up to 6 damage per tick, it's a simple matter of giving him the old switcheroo. I guess you can kill that which has no life. And you all were worried. Well, time for something completely different, the Thaumamancer. Oh, did I say completely different? I meant exactly the same as the last fight. Just unload all of your poison tip bolts into their face, roll around like your life depends on it, and shoot that final bolt right into our boy's shin. Easy fight, no notes. And that's almost all the bosses in World 2 defeated. We've got one more left, but we can't reach him until we get a new tool in World 3. So let's get that rolling. Oh good, a poison swamp. Sure hope everything here isn't immune to poison. Oh, it isn't. I mean, it's definitely a bit more resistant, but immune? No. Fun fact, there are several different types of chip damage status effects in this game. The Fungalmancer actually has a stronger poison type than we do, similar to Toxic in Dark Souls. And boy oh boy do I wish we could use it and stack it with our own. But despite taking him down on the first try with minimal issue, I regrettably can't take advantage of his status effect, since his materials don't craft any sort of crossbow. A true shame. Guess we'll just have to take out our frustration on Babushka Gradanya over here. Oh, turning invisible are we? Gosh, it'd be a real shame if someone were to give you a status effect and see the constant damage numbers, wouldn't it? Just one problem though. Gradanya here is constantly summoning puppets filled with children's souls. Yes, that's the lore. And because of that fact, there is 0 breathing room for me to refill my ammo pouch. So, when she only loses about 70% of her health to poison, we've got a bit of a problem. I did find a slightly better artifact for our damage and free ammo chance, so that's helpful. And I was able to craft the crawling amulet from the Fungalmancer's remains, which makes it so that all climbing and grappling hook use goes faster. But we're gonna need more than that. How about upgrading our Venom Bite to level 5 and maxing out our luck at 40? Yeah, that might do it. But rather than leave it to chance, I decided to change up one more thing. Instead of waiting to see if she runs out of health and getting stuck in phase 3, I decided to craft more ammunition while she was still in phase 1. Doing it now instead of later means less puppets and a less aggressive grandma, which gives me just enough room to get off the craft. Now we just need to play keep away while occasionally shooting her with some more poison, and there you go. Bye grandma! I collect my new Inquisitor tool, the Lumen Stone, then use it to build myself a magical bridge and push further into World 3. I find the Kraken Cyclops' predecessor, who is slightly more aggressive but has a smaller moveset than he does, and am rewarded for my efforts with a Mosspire brick and a trio of Mosspire trios. I can almost taste that maxed out crossbow now. Ow, Splinter! That's a level 7 Venom Bite and a level 7 Sturdy Crossbow made. All we need now is a few cluster level upgrades, and we'll be good to go. But before we push forward, let's go back a second and finish off World 2 before I forget, yeah? By using our newly acquired Lumen Stone, we can use this ethereal grappling point and unlock the Sanguimancer. And to his credit, this boss is one of the hardest bosses for me. Sorry, I misspoke. This is one of the hardest bosses for me normally. His attacks are very fast, and they all hit incredibly hard. The man is also all about that wombo combo, so if he catches you with more than one hit, you're probably already dead unless you're wearing thicker armor. But with our beautiful build wearing him down to nothing, this fight is actually reduced to a simple exercise in dodging and spacing. An easy battle, no more, no less. But 100% completion wasn't the only reason we took time out of our day to kill him. With his remains, we can build a new crossbow, the Bloodhunt Arbalest. Oh, and a ring that gives you health whenever you kill something. That's cool too. Now, the Arbalest may not have great scaling, and its damage is technically split between poison and dark, which means my dagger that I've had equipped this whole time isn't giving us as much damage as it could, but that's not why this crossbow is important. The real reason is that this thing just replaced our health pot. Incredible. Not only does a single bolt give me about 10% of my health back, but it does damage. This thing has PvP meta written all over it. But for our purposes, this just means that the mage chase sequences just got a whole lot easier. Why waste ammo and health pots when your ammo is your health pots? Anyway, let's wrap up World 3, starting with the Corpumancer. Nothing to see here. She's so weak to poison that we get her all the way up to 8 damage per tick. An easy fight. Moving on. The Sapblood Heart. Part tree, part not tree. This one is actually a bit of a weird one. The way this boss works is it transforms between Heart and Guardian. When you do enough damage to the Guardian version, it turns back to the Heart, giving you a chance to dish out some big damage. However, for reasons I'm not quite sure about, this never happened. The Sapblood never transformed back into a Heart, choosing instead to just chase me forever in its Guardian form. I'm guessing the issue is that I never did more physical damage to it, and just let the status damage do all of the work. Very strange. God's teeth, did I just break the game over my knee again? I don't see how. It's not like keeping bosses from transforming is beneficial to me or anything. That's foreshadowing, by the way. But more on that later. Let's get back to murdering bosses. The Mechanomancer is a bit poison resistant, since he too uses poison in his attacks, but not enough to matter. Hey look, that free ammo effect triggered twice in a row. I guess a 1.2 chance in 10 happens more often than you think. Woo! Right, no more of that. Go on now, get. The Mechanomancer does have another crossbow we can craft, which does physical and poison damage, but it doesn't trigger the poison status and does less damage than the blood crossbow, so it'll probably just sit at the bottom of our bottomless box. As for the Luminomancer, which is still one of my favorite boss designs to this day, it's a similar story. Pump full of poison, then shoot in the butt. Truly a death fitting for a creature of such grace and beauty. And with those remaining mages dead, we're on to World 4, Dreadstone Peak. Not much to talk about here. There's plenty of climbing puzzles and interesting enemy types, but there's very few brick walls in this world for our build. The two that remain are the first up on the docket, and are actually our first double battle, which, contrary to what you'd think, is actually really good for us. We may have to dodge twice the attacks, but we also have twice the targets to poison. Also worth noting, Biggie is a lot more susceptible to poison than Smalls, so firing most of your bolts into him should give you a better damage to bolt ratio. A neat peek behind the math, while both of the bosses share the same health pool, they can't both die if they aren't both taking damage. Biggie dies to his poison, but the game keeps at least 1 HP on the bar for Smalls. Unfortunately for them, I thought ahead. And with the final Inquisitor tool collected and the power of gliding flight gained, it doesn't take long before we remove the remaining mages from the level. With how weak the Neuromancer is, I opted to skip poison and just kill him with the blood crossbow instead, use our tried and true method on the Chronomancer, who is my second favorite boss of recent memory due to his ability to slow down the frames of the game, and also remind you exactly what time you fought him at with the clock on his back, then craft the Chronocraft Arbalest and Chronoblade Amulet, a fire damage crossbow, and an amulet that makes crafting ammunition go much faster. After that, we just poison our way through the Dracomancer, then complete Salet's questline, then face off against him as a boss, which is upsettingly easy compared to the amount of effort it takes to get the man to the end of said questline. Well, at least we get the coolest armor in the game for it, so that's fun. Oh, wait, I can't wear it. Oh man. After that, I poisoned the advanced darkness of the Umbramancer, bada bing bada boom, then relived my poison-only Sultan Sanctuary run by poisoning the Krakenworm's cousin, Kraxanir. Krakenor. Mega X Charizard. Blue Charizard from Super Smash Bros. After that, we chip down the Diablomancer, and finally head to the last world of the base game, the Elder Copse. And despite this being the last area of the game, aside from a couple of Shogoths running around and causing mischief, there's not much to talk about here either. The Kinetomancer? Not even worth mentioning. We're doing 15 damage a tick. The man had no chance in hell. The Bibliomancer? Nothing but disinformation. The man is as tall as his tails, and twice as irrelevant. Even the two Guardians of the Fire and Sky are nothing to this build. The icon of Pandemonium dies a slow and painful death, wishing it could hold back the coming storm, a gift I refuse to grant it. And the worm that does not die, contrary to popular belief and dogma, does in fact die to poison, like all the rest. Even Ambin, another Inquisitor whose questline we complete, is no match for our toxin-tipped bolts. And with him dead, that leaves only one more boss. The final boss, the Nameless God's brother, the Undone Sacrifice. But before we make that climb, there's one more world to visit, the Heart of Alterstone, the new DLC. And right away, something is different. We don't arrive at an obelisk, but rather in a dining room, with a glass of Alterstone vintage wine in front of us. To us then, may we shatter 1,000 worlds. And so we begin the DLC. Was that a memory? An illusion? It's hard to say at the moment. All that I can say is that we've arrived at the home of the champions. Here we can find two things. The first is the Crimson Pillar, an arena that we can enter to fight other Inquisitors, or waves upon waves of bosses. For obvious reasons, this build of ours isn't exactly made for the arena, since you not only have to fight several bosses in a row, but also their minions. And while having another method of access to crafting materials is appreciated, we simply don't have the ammunition to push through the waves. Maybe in the future, we'll have a build that can make its way to the top of the arena, but not today. But there's more than just the arena. There's actually an entire city down here, filled with crumbling buildings, dripping causeways, and more assassins and monsters that you can shoot a bolt at. These little bastards are all over the place, and they're incredibly hard to see. But if you know where to look, a single bolt is enough to take them out. This place is a labyrinth. You'll go across rooftops, into hidden walls, and forever climb higher into the crumbling rafters of the city, platforming your way to the top, or suffering a devastating fall to the ground below. And at the very top, the Keeper and the Kin, the first of several new bosses in the DLC. Gone is the mechanic of 1 health bar 2 bosses, and gone is the option to focus fire on whichever boss is less resistant to poison. Here, you'll have to fight both of the bosses equally. And while they're just reskins of previous bosses, namely Urik's Necklace of Ears and the Green Huntsman, this is just a warm-up. A test to see if you can handle 2 very different movesets at once. Which I cannot, apparently. But I am nothing if not adaptable, and the answer to our problem is relatively simple. It's extremely difficult to craft more ammo when there are 2 bosses around, so don't let there be 2 bosses. Instead, just focus your entire first clip on 1 boss. Focusing on the ranged boss is probably the better call, but so long as you have the Chronoblade amulet equipped, you should be able to craft more bolts regardless of which boss you kill first. After that, it's just a walk down memory lane. Hell of a good start. But that was at the top of the city. Let's see what waits for us at the bottom. I deal with some oversized rodents, then make my way further into the neighborhoods. Oh, this just screams boss fight. And sure enough, it is. Sharena, the true herbalist. And it's right around here where that foreshadowing I mentioned all those minutes ago shows its face. Remember how we fought the Sapblood Heart and it refused to transition into the next phases? Well, Sharena is supposed to have a second phase that she occasionally switches to. Much like the Sapblood Heart, this isn't a true second phase that happens at certain points in her health bar, but rather just something that is supposed to happen after you deal enough damage to her. If we were fighting her normally, she'd set down that big pot of hers, a second boss would emerge from it, and it would start to constantly heal her while she got increasingly aggressive, forcing you to dodge her attacks while focusing damage on the second boss to stop the healing. But, yeah, that never happened. I never even saw Pot Boy. She just fucking died. That's not supposed to happen. I don't know, man. I just work here. I unlock some additional lore about the Inquisition and its efforts, as well as about the world around us and where exactly this game takes place in comparison to the sequel, then make my way further into the depths, into the Choir Hall. All sorts of profane arts are being practiced here, letting us catch glimpses of the magic and alchemy that Alterstone Kingdom used to rise to power. But eventually, we come to the boss at the bottom of the world, the 4 Divines. What starts as 4 moving masks of divinity very quickly turns into eldritch horror, with the masks revealing their true form in an attempt to remove you from this plane of existence. But there's one problem though. Not only can the elder gods be poisoned, but poison, once again, breaks them. Once one of the masks takes enough damage, it's supposed to hide back inside the mask and let another mask begin the attack, forcing you to grapple around the arena and focus on positioning rather than a full assault on one target. But for some reason, a poisoned mask can't fully retreat. The constant tick of damage forces it to repeatedly attempt to hide, failing each time. As the fight goes on, multiple masks are supposed to open, attacking you from all sides. But because the first mask can't officially close, the 4 Divines can only ever have one mask open to fight you. And after less than a minute, it's already over. If that's the power of the gods that Alterstone started worshipping instead of the gods above, it's no wonder they were wiped off the map. But with the quote-unquote gods of this world defeated, there's only one last secret to uncover. The first alchemastery. That's right, the start of it all. The origin of the salt. The beginnings of the end. The point at which mortals decided to play as gods and were immediately punished for their arrogance. But as badly as I want to deep dive the lore and go Pepe Sylvia on all these games, that's not why we're here. We're here to kill Barracks, the first successful attempt at a Marked Inquisitor, and the first Sylvan to successfully cheat death with the power of alchemy. This is it, the hardest boss in the game. His attacks are fast, cover the entire arena, and hit incredibly hard. Truly, this will be the ultimate test of, oh wait, he can be poisoned. Well, don't get me wrong, we still have to play well. Getting hit by one of his attacks will still ruin your day, and they are a bit difficult to dodge if you don't know what to expect. But with the power of fast crafting and poison, well, you know how it goes by now. Goodbye, Barracks, you had a good run. Oh? What's this now? A second health bar? Oh look, he's gone full feral as well. He's got the crab mouth and everything. Barracks is incredibly aggressive in this phase, so much so that I'm barely able to get a bolt off between his attacks. But despite his best efforts, it only takes another rack of bolts to take him down. For salt we are, and to salt we will return. Just some of us sooner than others. I find Cantor Zanya, a keeper of the Choir Hall, who reveals that we've been here before. The Magebane we used to become an Inquisitor, we took it here. This is where we began. Or rather, where our past self died and our current form, an undying husk, was born. But enough about the lore. Save that for a We Need to Talk video. It's time we put this game out of its misery. I find and kill the hidden boss in the Elder Copse, the Inferian Warden, who you can technically kill back in the prologue if you aren't challenge running the game, go back to the Crimson Pillar Arena, and clear the first tier difficulty of the boss rush mode, killing 5 bosses in a row just to prove I can, then plug runes that suspiciously look like my name into the portal to unlock the super secret level, Hollowed Hill, where you can unlock the best produce a man could ever want, the pumpkin helmet and the carrot throwing knives. Truly, a bountiful harvest. And with that obligatory self-reference collected, I climb the imperfect shrine floor by floor and arrive at the final challenge of the run, the Undone Sacrifice, brother of the nameless god and catalyst for the influx of mages that we've been dealing with this entire time. And despite his best efforts to remain the filter through which all the gods speak, it doesn't take long to realize that poison, once again, will have its day. And with one final bolt, that Sultan sacrifice beaten with only crossbows. The mechanical ingenuity of man is enough to slay gods and those that pretend to be them. And with the Undone Sacrifice's heart consumed, we have the choice of ending the cycle and the life of every Sylvan person on the continent, or taking his place and letting the madness continue. Let chaos take the world.